my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso live here on S3 on a Tuesday morning as we open up to some health discussions. Today, we're tackling the topic of addiction and how to deal with it. Now, a recent study has come out. It's found that a significant percentage of 18 to 26-year-olds check their smartphones upwards of 30 times in an hour.
Where do you have the time?
30 times in 1 hour. What? Surely aren't doing anything else. And it can be crippling. Now, here to talk about that study and addiction in general is mobile solutions specialist Matabo Sikhonyana and addiction counselor Guy Duplessis. If you think that you suffer from some sort of addiction, be it in relationships, scrolling on social media, or even eating certain types of food or drinks or substances, share your experience with us on our WhatsApp line. That number is 063 408 8863, and of course share those experiences, questions, and our panel will be happy to discuss further. Morning, guys.
Good morning.
That is some crazy stuff. 30 times in 1 hour. And maybe, Guy, you can weigh in first. From a psychological perspective, what exactly is addiction?
There's many different definitions. Maybe just to give a sort of elevator simplified one, it can be seen as a relationship to a behavior or a substance, which there's sort of two elements. The one is loss of control, and the other one is negative consequences. So normally when those two elements are present with any type of relationship, then it's sort of seen as addiction. Addiction is also on a continuum from mild to severe, but basically it's those two elements that need to be present for it to be determined as addiction.
Matabo, you spend a lot of time looking at behavioral sort of dynamics, and one study that you've recently conducted found that young people are spending almost a quarter of an hour, or is it a quarter of an hour on their smartphones? And I'm sure you came out with lots more findings in this study. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, some of the more shocking ones for me is firstly, on the topic of addiction, 80% of people saying, I am addicted. So saying, you know, I have lost that sense of control, that maybe there are some, you know, negative aspects.
Yeah.
A second part of that is 40% of people saying, you know what, I'd rather skip meals than run out of battery power. In the previous study that we did at Aduzi, we saw that people are renting our power banks twice a day. So what that means is I can't go a day without my phone.
They feel that they're not connected to the world or to what's going on around them in the absence of their cell phones.
100%. And obviously we live in South Africa, so there's the safety concern. Most of our respondents are saying, if I don't have my phone, I feel anxious, I feel vulnerable. And obviously with the economy opening up, people going out and stuff, it becomes even more of that anxiousness and vulnerability around safety.
That is scary. But what does that mean long-term for people that is so reliant on their phones, that can't cope without, 15 minutes or 20 minutes without having their phone in their hand?
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely scary, but it's also the reality of the world that we live in. Because if you consider most people are using their phones to make an income, it's how we're connecting, it's where you get your entertainment. It's kind of that mobile-first instant gratification culture. And I think the difficulty is, how do you find moderation between I'm losing this control over my life to this phone, and I need to also do my job.
Yeah. Guy, when it comes, broadly speaking, to the subject of addiction, and probably depending on what sort of thing you are addicted to, how harmful can addiction be, or how harmful is addiction of any nature?
Yeah, that's sort of similar on a continuum as well, very much depending on the substance or the behavior that one is addicted to, that has an influence. But in general, it can be very destructive in one's life and one's relationships, and on many levels, physiologically, psychologically, environmentally, financially. And even the cell phone addiction and tech addiction, which is becoming a big thing these days, you know, it might seem odd that a relationship with a phone or technology can be that detrimental in one's life, but it can have as severe consequences as addiction to heroin or cocaine. The substance or the behavior as such is not really the issue, it's the relationship with it.
I mean, we're seeing people are cycling. Here they are on their phones, crossing the road, not looking left, not looking right, not looking left again. on their phones. Do you see? It's a real thing. And it's only when you start seeing a video like what we're seeing playing on the screen right now that you realize that most of us often do find ourselves in a state like this. And we're seeing it around us so many times that it's almost normal.
But I also find that some people are addicted to scrolling. It's not even about the content itself. It's just about like a coping mechanism. So a lot of people is using this way just to like forget what they're going through. If they're anxious, like let me just see what is happening in someone else's life. I'm sure this is something you've seen in the study as well.
100%. I think, not even I think, because I do know. But essentially, most people are using this for social media.
Yeah.
So instant messaging, and then your apps like Instagram, Twitter, etc., which are apps where we know it is a scrolling culture.
Yes.
Sometimes you find yourself not even really picking up everything that's happening.
Yeah.
Just, and if you've seen what Instagram has done on the algorithm, where there isn't even a scroll more, like a go to more.
Yeah.
You just keep
finish
going.
it.
100%.
Yeah. Guy, this is a very interesting one for me, is that knowing that these are the times we live in, how we connect with our loved ones and those around us in our work and our world, does typically happen on our mobile devices, for example. The dependency on these mobile devices that we use seems so normal and so critical today. Can we then really say it's addiction if we're really just living in the times?
That's a very important question. So one has to make a difference between use, problematic use, and addiction. So addiction normally refers to the extreme end of the continuum for people. So just because you spend a lot of time on your phone doesn't mean you're necessarily addicted to it. It depends how much loss of control there is and also how much damages there are. So if it's really damaging your life, then you're moving into the addictive realm. But if it's problematic, you know, you're not necessarily addicted to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the problem is when you're not able to connect with people in real life anymore, when you don't find joy in going out and spending time with the people that you used to because you'd rather be looking at them on the screen, right?
Well, please do weigh in. Addiction is the topic for today. We'd love to hear from you. That WhatsApp line is 063-408-8863. We'd love to connect with you.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back, everybody. This is your Feel Good Breakfast Show here on S3. And today we're discussing and continuing our discussion on addiction this morning. And we have mobile solutions specialist Matabo Sehonyana and addiction counselor Guy Duplessis. Now, do you suffer from any addictions? We'd love to hear from you. So please do share your WhatsApp voice notes to that number 063-408-8863. And we actually have one that came through right now. And this one is from Clive. Take a listen.
Morning, guys. My name's Clive. So my addiction is sleeping tablets. I suffer hugely on sleeping tablets. I don't sleep at night if I don't take sleeping tablets. Is there any advice that you guys could give me that could possibly help? I'd really, really appreciate it. Thanks for a great show and chat to you guys soon. Cheers. Bye. Clive.
Thanks very much for that, Clive. Very good question. Guy Duplessis, this one is for you. And sleeping tablets are a common one, right? That does come through a lot.
Sleeping tablets can be as a big problem as any other substance, you know, whether it's cocaine, urine, sleeping tablets. And that's a particularly difficult substance to come off as well. Sleeping tablets and sedatives, if you develop a physiological dependency on that, the withdrawals is really long and really difficult. So it seems like a, you know, lesser of a substance compared to hard drugs, but equally problematic.
And what advice then do you have for someone like Clive? What are the steps that Clive would then need to follow if he wants to, which it sounds like he does want to not depend on sleeping pills? What specialists does he see? Is it a psychological thing or is it a combination of interventions?
Particularly with sleeping tablets, the physiological component is really important in the sense of how to successfully withdraw from that, because it's one of those substances you can't just stop compared to, you know, let's say cocaine or something. You know? So it's really important to see a qualified addiction specialist for that and potentially work with the GP or the psychiatrist to design a sort of withdrawal protocol or detox protocol or tapering protocol, if you will.
Thank you, Guy, for answering that question. Now, we also have Zulani that weighed in on the WhatsApp. Let's take a listen.
Good morning, Expresso, my beautiful family. My name is Zolani from Philipstown in Northern Cape. The only addiction I have is the cigarettes. I want to get rid of cigarettes because I've been smoking for so many years, but I don't feel like to smoke anymore. I can't live without cigarettes. I don't know. What can I do? Please help me. Thank you very much.
Again, and I love with both callers that they're admitting to that. They're admitting that they have a problem and it's something they want to deal with. So how do they deal with, again, in Zolani's case, how does he get rid of it? Because he says that he wants to stop smoking.
Yeah. There's various smoking cessation programs. So I think very often smoking isn't placed in the, I mean, it's addiction, yeah, but it's not placed in the same category as normal substance abuse, even though it is a substance and one is abusing it. And the intervention, I think, is quite different to, let's say, other substances. So there are specific stopping smoking programs, and if it's another addiction, there's specific programs for that. There's many online programs available for stopping smoking. There's a lot of free help available for that. So I would suggest that he sees somebody that specializes in smoking cessation or an online program that deals with that.
Tap into the various available resources out there, and I think it starts with really just tapping into checking and reading up on it, reading up on why one can become so dependent, and then getting in touch with all those various authorities or organizations. We know that we've established from this conversation that addiction by its nature can be crippling to one sort of normal flow of life. Let's talk to this, Matabo, the addiction to phones, very much a 21st century issue. What do you think is driving this dependency that we have to our mobile phones or our mobile devices, whether it was phones or tablets, whatever the case may be?
I think it's really about this kind of instant gratification culture. We want it and we want it now. So obviously with the rise of social media and all of those things, your news, you get at a click of a button.
Yeah.
Your entertainment, that's where you connect with your family. Everything is right there for you. And kind of getting used to that, I think, is what leads to this kind of high level of dependency.
But how do we then curb this? Because, I mean, as you're saying, it is our lifestyle now. This is what we have to do. This is for our phone. Whether you're an influencer, whether you're working, we are dependent on our phones. It's not going away. So how do we then curb this and change the stats?
I think from my end, what I would say, or what I preach even to myself, is moderation. I don't think it's realistic for us to think people aren't going to use their phones a lot, just because of the nature of our society and our post-COVID world. But I do think you can start to teach yourself good behaviors.
Yes.
So starting to differentiate between the purpose for which you're using your phone, how much you're using your phone. I know on Apple, for example, every week it gives you how much screen time you've had that week. Starting to...
So that's what
I'm
your
like,
your phone health, is that what it's called?
Yes.
Usage health or something like that.
And I am down 8% this week.
From what?
No.
Down 8% from 20? Or down 8?
Moderation. She's reducing it, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I love this. Thank you so much, Guy. Thank you very much, Matabo, for really, I think, opening us up to understanding that, it is and can be addictive behavior, but that there are ways to find the balance, right? Because, like we say, phones are going absolutely nowhere. You would be lying to yourself to think that we're not going to be using them. If you think people are using their phones a lot today, trust me, they'll be using them a lot more in a year's time than what you're seeing today. It's really finding health in all of that. Send those voice notes, 063-408-8863, with your questions, your advice, or even your own personal experiences, and our panel will be here to answer.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It is Expresso. We're deep in conversation. We're chatting about addiction this morning with some insights into the different types of addictions and how people can be affected by their own addictions. Now, mobile solution specialist Matabo Sikhonyana and addiction counselor Uncle Guy du Plessis have been with us all morning to discuss this topic and how it affects our mental health in general, because you do find there's a strong correlation and a connection there. Do you suffer from any addictions? Please do share with us on WhatsApp. Send that voice note to 063-408-8863. Thanks for staying with us.
I guess you asked a question there. Guy, how does addiction affect our mental health?
On many, many levels. I think one of the main problems is it disconnects you from the world and your relationships. So our mental health is very much dependent on the quality of our relationships to a large extent. So the more our relationships suffer, the more negative effect that's going to have on our mental health and your capacity to self-regulate, self-esteem. There's just so many levels that it affects it deleteriously.
Yeah. Mathabo, after completing that study, which really has come through with some incredible insights, how do you think we can take the findings from that and really use them to better operate in our relationships with our mobile devices and our relationships with those around us who may be addicted to their phones?
I think, again, acceptance is maybe the first step. So trying to really figure out, do you have this problem and is it a negative impact is the first part. Number two, I think that there are signs that are very clear. So
What are they?
Yeah, so for example, sleeping with your phone at night.
In your
85%
hand.
of people going to the loo with their phone. When we saw those videos on screen, you can't even just walk across the road without your phone. And I think that thing of feeling like you instantly need to be responding to messages, these are all signs that there may be a overuse of your phone or a misuse of your phone. I like what Uncle Guy was saying just now.
Uncle Guy. That's
around
the new one, eh?
Yeah, that is the main one now. I like what he was saying when he was referring to that kind of self-esteem, dissociation, etc. I think with phone use, it's not super cut and dry because there are obviously positive elements. That thing of being able to connect to a broader world, that thing of being able to connect with a global audience or creating safe spaces online, etc. But then you look at those issues around self-esteem. You look at those issues around people finding their validation from things that are happening on their phone from strangers more than from people who actually matter or know about them, or know them or care about them. And those are, the little nuances that you have to be so careful of.
In terms of addiction, just overall, what is the first step to overcoming this? Early on we spoke about admitting to it, understanding that you do have a problem, but then what is the next step? If there's any of our listeners and our viewers listening right now and saying, I think I have an addiction, not just to phone, but to substances, what would be the next step for them?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the first step would be to acknowledge that there is a problem. And even before that step, there's a process. So a lot of times people aren't sure whether they have addiction or not. So I think before acknowledgement, the first step is to speak to somebody or to do some assessment to first see, is there a problem? And once you've identified a problem, is to see the right person for that or the support group. Fortunately, in the world of addiction treatment, you have 12-step meetings and social support systems that are free as well. So it's not always that you have to pay a therapist or go into a treatment center. There's a lot of free resources available as well. But it starts by accepting that there is an issue and then reaching out for help. Because the nature of addiction is you can't do it yourself. So you need to reach out. So that's a very important next step to take is no, you can't do it on your own.
We've got a WhatsApp voice note that's come through from Lynn Ann. Lynn Ann, what have you got to say?
Hi, good morning. I'm Lynn Ann. I'm addicted to smoking this type of pipe since 2 years old. I really like to stop, but I don't know how, and I'm 18 years old now.
Wow, 16 years of smoking a pipe. How can we assist Lynn Ann?
Similar to with other addictions, is acknowledge that and then seek for the right help. And unfortunately, addiction treatment can also be very expensive. So it very much depends on one's resources. So there's a continuum of how much it would cost, what your resources are, and what you can afford. Like I said, fortunately, there are free help available as well. It's support.
Are younger people of Lynn Ann's age, for example, so say 16 to 18 or 21, more susceptible to addiction that sticks longer than, let's say, an older person, one might assume, would be able to control it better? Or is there no real discrimination in terms of age when it comes to addiction and addictive behaviors?
Important question, particularly with the cell phone issues. The younger you are, the more vulnerable you are to addiction, because your brain hasn't fully developed. With teenagers, there's a lot of egocentricity and elements of risk-taking. So they're more prone to doing things that could potentially become addictive. And like I said, their brains aren't fully developed, not enough self-regulation, capacity to control themselves. So if you start using substances very young, there's more of a chance of you getting addicted to it than if you would when you started when you were older. And the same as with social media and tech. You know, it's like exposing your brain to cocaine when you're 12 years old would be considered obviously a negative thing. But exposing your brain to social media and technology at that level is a similar risk, you know, because social media and technology can be addictive. So it's really important, I think, for parents and younger people to be aware that kids are in a vulnerable position, and they're more prone to become addicted to technology and social media than, let's say, an adult would, even though it is, you know, addictive to adults as well.
Guy, Mathoba, thank you so much for joining us this morning on a very, very important topic, addiction. I think one thing we can take away from it is that in some way or another, we all have some sort of addictive personality, but you are not alone. There are groups out there to assist you with this if you do have addiction, but we, of course, do want to keep the conversation going. So if you do still want to weigh in, that number is 063-408-8863. We'd love to hear from you.